Hello everyone. In this lecture, I am going to discuss a very important topic, that is fetal circulation. So in this lecture, we'll discuss about the three aspects. First, we'll discuss what is the fetal circulation, that when the fetus in the uterus or in womb, then what all flow system is there. Second aspect will deal about what all circulatory changes took place when the fetus take first breath or the subsequent breath. Right, so the changes which all taking place after the birth of baby. And the third will discuss about the remnant structures in the fetus, because there are many temporary shunts or the openings are there that all are not required after the birth of baby. So what happened with this all changes, that we'll discuss in the third aspect, that is the remnant structure. Okay, so this 3 points will be covered in this lecture. So before we start with this lecture, I'll suggest you that you just watch this lecture completely and till the end, because here I'm going to draw a very simple figure, and by this you can clear out your concept very easily, and you can also make this diagram in an easy manner, right? So during fetal life, we know that the lungs are not functional. So how will the fetus get its nourishment and how it excretes its waste? Yes, it is the placenta, the main source, which is responsible for the exchange of these all nutrient, oxygen and the waste in between the mother and the fetus, isn't? So in this fetal circulation, what all things will require, I will draw here first and then we'll start with the flow system. Okay, so the main source for the exchange of all this thing is the placenta, right? So let me draw the placenta here first. And what is the shape of the placenta? It is the discoid shaped structure, right? So here it is the placenta, which is a discoid shaped structure, and in the placenta there are many finger like projections. Yes, and these all are known as the structural and functional unit of placenta, and what it is called? The chorionic villi. Okay, now here it is the placenta and the cord. In the cord, how many vessels are there? There are 4 vessels. Initially there are 4 vessels, and by the 4th month 1 vessel disappears, right? So initially there are the 4 vessels, 2 umbilical artery, 2 umbilical vein, but by the 4th month 1 umbilical vein just disappears and only 1 left, that is left umbilical vein. Okay, so but we can say that in the umbilical cord there are only 3 vessels. So here I am drawing the 3 vessels which is responsible for whole exchange of these nutrient and the waste, but you just need to remember only 3 vessels. What all 3 are there? That is the 2 umbilical arteries and 1 umbilical vein. Okay, so because here the important thing is that the arteries here carries deoxygenated blood. They carries waste from the fetus toward the mother. Okay, so there are the 2 umbilical artery. So here I am drawing with the blue, and the umbilical artery carries deoxygenated blood. So these are the 2 umbilical arteries, and there is a 1 umbilical vein. So what vein carries? The vein carries oxygenated blood. Yes, although it is a vein, but still it carries oxygenated blood. This is the source that carries oxygen and the nutrient from the mother to the fetus. Okay, so here I have drawn with the placenta and the cord, and in the placenta the finger like projections are the chorionic villi. These are the functional structural unit, and in this there are the capillary network, and these all exchange their nutrient and waste in between these finger like projection and the intervillous spaces, right? So here is the placenta and the cord. Now let me draw the important structure which all required in this circulation, right? So here I am drawing the liver first. Then the very important, let me mention here, this is the liver. Okay. Now the important vessel which carries deoxygenated blood from the fetus lower body part, that is the inferior vena cava. Okay. So here is the inferior vena cava. Okay. Now the very important structure which is responsible for main this whole circulation, that is the heart. Okay. So here are the two upper chamber of the heart. What it is? This is the right atrium, and this is the left atrium, right? Now comes the ventricles. So here are the ventricles. This is the right ventricle and the left ventricle. Okay. So these are the four chambers of the heart: right, left atria and the right, left ventricle. Okay. And this is the main vessel that carries deoxygenated blood from the lower portion of the body of the fetus. Okay. Now here is the another vessel that carries deoxygenated blood from the upper part of the body, that is superior vena cava. Okay. Now I'll draw here the another artery, the artery which is responsible for flowing the deoxygenated blood in the adult. In the adult, this carries deoxygenated blood from this right ventricle to the lungs. Okay. So this is the pulmonary trunk or the pulmonary artery. So this is the pulmonary artery. Now comes the major artery in our body which carries oxygenated blood. What it is? This is the aorta. So aorta carries oxygenated blood and it flows throughout the systemic circulation, right? So this is the aorta. Okay, and there are the four pulmonary veins which opens in the left atrium, and here are the lungs. And during fetal life, the lungs are non-functional. Okay. During fetal life, the lungs are non-functional. They are solid and they filled with fluid. So these are the small structures, right? So this is the lungs. Okay, so we just make an outline what all structures are required for this circulation. Now we'll start with the circulation. That is the first aspect of our lecture, that is how the fetal circulation takes place before birth. Okay, now let's see here. Firstly, as I told you before, that the vessel which carries oxygenated blood, is the umbilical vein. So this is the umbilical vein that carries oxygenated blood. So this umbilical vein enters in the body or the fetus through the abdominal wall by the route of umbilical cord. Okay, and it transversely run across the liver, and here it bifurcate into two. Division. So the first branch, the smaller branch or the lesser amount of blood is going in the liver. So this small branch just merged with the hepatic portal vein. So this small branch merged with the hepatic portal vein, and this supplies the liver sinusoids, right? But the major portion of this umbilical vein forms the shunt, because here you can see here, this is also the vein and this is also the vein, that is inferior vena cava. So where the two veins merge together, okay, so this shunt, where the two veins merge together, this forms shunt here, and this is called the ductus venosus. Okay, because this is also vein and this is also vein, and this umbilical vein carries 80% saturated oxygen in this flow system. Okay, so although it is a vein, but still it carries oxygenated blood, because by the definition of the vessels all which going toward the heart is called vein, and the vessel which carries oxygenated blood and which goes away from the heart is usually termed as artery. So that's why only we are saying here the vein, because it is flowing toward the heart. Okay, but it carries oxygenated blood, and how much it is saturated about? It is of 80%, right? So when it run transversely across this liver, it bifurcate into two, and the major portion, the major amount of blood flow directly enters into the inferior vena cava. So as we know that in this inferior vena cava there is already a deoxygenated blood which flows from the lower portion of the body, and from this umbilical vein, what it mixes here? The oxygenated blood. So here the oxygenated blood is mixed with this deoxygenated blood, right? And again from this liver also the deoxygenated blood, through the vein also enter in this inferior vena cava. So again there is a mixing of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood, right? So once this whole blood comes in this right atrium, okay, the oxygenated blood is also coming here, the major portion of the flow system through the umbilical vein, and the deoxygenated blood through this inferior vena cava is also coming here. Okay, so there is a quite mixing of this blood here, but along with that the upper part of the body, that is the head, neck, these also draining their deoxygenated blood from this superior vena cava, and that also comes into the right atrium. Okay, but because of this flow dynamic, majority of this oxygenated blood directly flows into the left atrium. Okay, so here we'll see what is the structure which comes in between these two atrias. So majority of this oxygenated blood, okay, directly flows in the left atrium. It does not go down. Okay, so there is an interatrial septum, or there is a division in between the atrias, and this division is formed by the two septas. Here it is the septum secundum and this is the septum primum. But in the septum secundum there is a hole, and this hole is called as foramen ovale. and this foramen ovale allows blood to move from this right atria to the left atria. Okay, so this is the another third important thing, because first we have seen there are the 5 important things which comes in this fetal circulation. So first is the umbilical vein, that is not present in the adult. Then second is the ductus, venosus, and the third one is the foramen ovale. Okay, so this foramen ovale allows the blood to move from this to this side, and majority of this is oxygenated blood, right? And in the left atria also there is a few amount of blood which comes from pulmonary veins. So pulmonary vein is also draining, but it is contributing a very little, because during fetal life the lungs are not functional. Okay, so they also required less amount of blood for their development, and the gas exchange is not taking place during fetal life here. Okay, so there is no major amount of blood which has come through these all pulmonary vein. Okay, so there is a little amount which comes through these pulmonary vein, and that eject into the left atria. Okay, now this majority of blood, that is the mixed, but it is mostly oxygenated, that directly flows into the left ventricle. By which valve? This is the mitral valve or bicuspid valve. So by this valve, the majority of blood which comes in the left ventricle, this directly goes into the aorta, or it enters into the aorta and then flows and comes down and enters in the systemic circulation, right? Now what happened in the right side of the heart? So in the right side of the heart, the blood is coming through the hepatic veins, it coming through with the inferior vena cava, but it is also contributed by the umbilical vein, and the blood is also coming through the superior vena cava. Okay, so the majority oxygenated blood moves directly in the left atrium, and the rest of the deoxygenated blood, or the blood which comes directly from the superior vena cava, that enters into the right ventricle through this valve, that is the tricuspid valve. So the blood which is mostly deoxygenated, which comes into the right ventricle through this tricuspid valve, and this enters into the pulmonary trunk or the pulmonary artery, that is the artery which carries deoxygenated blood, yes, in the adult. Okay, but very important thing what happened here is that when it flows in this vessel, very little amount goes toward the lungs, because lungs are not functional. The alveoli are filled with the fluid, so there is no gas exchange takes place. So the arterioles which lines the alveoli, they do not take part in the exchange of gases. So these arterioles remain narrow, they remain constricted. So because of this narrowing, the resistance in these vessels remain high, and the flow in these vessels remain low. Okay, so there is a low flow but high resistance system in these vessels. Okay, so because of this high resistance, very little amount of blood is going through these vessels and receive in the lungs. But here the another very important thing is that the major amount of this pulmonary artery blood flow directly shunt into the aorta, and this is the fifth important thing which is the different from the adult, is called the Ductus arteriosus. So Ductus arteriosus, because here again this is the pulmonary artery and this is the aorta, so where the two arteries are connecting with each other, so this shunt is called the Ductus arteriosus. So what we have seen here is that the majority of blood from this right ventricle, it enters into the pulmonary trunk or the artery, but less is moving toward the lung because the vessels are constricted, the resistance is high, the flow is decreased, but the majority of blood is passing directly through this Ductus arteriosus and again this deoxygenated blood is mixing in this aorta and it flows down, right? And from there, once it reaches in the lower portion, it reaches till the iliac arteries, and when it reaches till the internal iliac arteries, then these branches, these internal iliac branches or the hypogastric arteries, what they do, they connect with the two umbilical arteries here. They connect with the two umbilical arteries and they eject their deoxygenated blood in the cord for again reoxygenation. Okay, so very little amount is going down in the lower part of the body, and majority is again going in the umbilical cord and connect with the umbilical arteries, right? So this is how the flow system takes place. So here we have seen that there are the two structures, there are the two organs which bypasses the majority of blood. Okay, so here we have seen this is the first structure, that is liver, in which the umbilical vein crosses, but majority it directly shunts into the inferior vena cava. And the another structure is the lung, and here also the pulmonary artery carries blood through this lung, but majority of blood shunts through this ductus arteriosus into the aorta, in the descending aorta. Okay, so what we have seen here is that during fetal life, the pressure within the right side of the heart is more. Right side of the heart is more. Why? Because in the right atrium, there is an additional amount of blood which is coming through this umbilical vein. Okay, so the blood flow is more. Okay, the blood flow is more, the amount is more. Okay, so with this high pressure, the blood is going directly through this opening into the left atria. And again there is a high pressure in the right ventricle. And why it is more? Because the right ventricle needs to eject blood against the high resistance vessel, because here we have seen the resistance in these pulmonary artery remain high, because during fetal life the lungs are not functional, they are filled with fluid. So the right ventricle needs to eject with this high pressure against this high resistance vessel, that is the pulmonary artery. So altogether the pressure in the right atrium remain high, and also the workload of this right ventricle is also high during fetal life. Okay, so what all 5 structures are there in the fetal life and the fetal circulation? 2 are the vessels, that is, one is umbilical vein and the second is the umbilical artery. Okay, and the 3 shunts are there in the fetal life. Okay, so what all shunts are there? One is the ductus venosus, second is foramen ovale, and the third is the ductus arteriosus. Okay, so that's all about the fetal circulation during fetal life before birth. Okay, now we'll talk about the second component in this fetal circulation, that what all changes take place when the baby take first breath or the subsequent breath. Okay, so the changes which occurs after the birth of baby. So as the birth of baby takes place, what happened? The umbilical cord is cut down here. Okay, so when the umbilical cord is cut down, what happened? The flow will not establish in these umbilical vein and the umbilical artery. So what happened? The umbilical vein occluded, this become narrow. Okay, so when the flow is not there, then this shunt will close down. So as these 2 structures shuts down, they do not contribute any amount of blood in this inferior vena cava, and that will not come in the right atrium. So the important thing which took place here is that once the additional amount of blood is not coming in this atrium, then the pressure in the right atrium falls down. Initially it was rising because there is a more blood, but here the pressure in this atria decreases. Okay, now after the birth it just established the postnatal and the adult circulation. And how it is? Firstly, the blood is not going more. Okay, secondly, what happened? The lungs are now functional, because as the baby take breath, what happened? The lungs expands. What happened? The lungs expands. So lungs expands and they are filled with the air, and they take part in the exchange of gases in between the alveoli and the arterioles. Okay, so the arterioles are also open up, they become wide. So once they become wide, what happened? The pressure or the resistance in these vessels decreases. Yes, so the pressure in these vessels decreases and the flow is more. Okay, so as the resistance decreases and the flow become high, what happened? The more amount of blood, because more is going through these lungs, then more will be coming through these pulmonary vein. So the good amount of blood is coming through these pulmonary vein, and this also drains into the left atria. Okay, so initially it was very few, but now because there is a good amount of blood which carries toward the lung, then there is a good amount of blood which is also coming through these lung. Okay, so this large amount of blood which come in this left atria creates high pressure. It creates high pressure in this left atrium, and because of this high pressure, what happened? Here this septum, that is the septum primum, forced against toward this septum secundum. Okay, so this create a force against the septum secundum, and now this become closed down. It temporarily closed down this opening. Okay, so with this high pressure in the left atria, that create pressure against this wall or the septa, and this closes the foramen ovale temporarily, and now no more blood will come through these opening in the either side. Okay, so no more blood will come from this right to left atria. Okay, so what happened next? The whole blood which comes in this left atria, this directly goes down and it enters into the left ventricle, and from the left ventricle this flow enter into the aorta, and then it goes in the systemic circulation, but it is highly oxygenated, it is not mixed now. Okay, now what happened in the right side? The blood which is coming through these superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava, they both come in this right atrium, but here there is no additional amount of blood through this umbilical vein, so pressure decreases, and then this whole blood directly comes in the right ventricle, and from right ventricle it enters into the pulmonary artery, but now the resistance in these artery decreases. Okay, so resistance is decreasing, so what happened? The whole of the blood is going directly into the lungs. Okay, so now it is not going through this shunt, it directly goes in the lungs for the exchange. Okay, but very important thing happen here is that when the blood which is going through this aorta, it comes here, then there is a reverse shunting takes place. The few amount of blood is again returning back in this pulmonary artery, and because now it resumes the adult circulation, the blood is which is going through this aorta is highly oxygenated. What happened? When it comes back, this highly oxygenated blood is responsible for for the closing down of this ductus arteriosus. How it is possible? Because these walls are very sensitized to oxygen level. So during fetal life, there is a prostaglandin E2 which is responsible for the dilatation of these shunt, and once the oxygen level rises, and when the pressure of this oxygen reaches 50 millimeter of mercury, then it becomes sensitizes and it decreases the level of prostaglandin E2, which is responsible for dilation. So when the oxygen level is more, the prostaglandin will be released less, and by this less production of prostaglandin, the muscles become constricted. Okay, and the another thing is that from the lungs, with the taking of first breath, the lungs also releases bradykinin. So this bradykinin is also responsible for contraction of smooth muscles. Okay, so when the bradykinin is released, this also causes the smooth muscle contraction and it closes down the ductus arteriosus. Okay, and the last thing is that once the blood flows in this aorta and it comes down in the lower part of the body, it do not go back in the arteries because it is now cut down. So all of the blood will goes down and it supplies the lower part of the body. Okay, so these are the changes which took place after the birth of baby. Both the vessels are cut down, no more blood will be going toward the heart and no more will exit from this fetal body. Okay, and the three shunts which are open during fetal life, they become closed down. What are they? The ductus venosus, the foramen ovale and the ductus arteriosus. Okay, now the last third aspect in this fetal circulation is that the remnant structure. Okay, so these are the 5 things, and which these are not needed more, because after the birth there is no use of these all 5 things. Then what they became. Okay, so first we'll start with this umbilical vein. So as actually the functional closure of these all 5 is immediately, but they become ligament quite later. It takes month to close down permanently. Okay, so the umbilical vein, now it becomes the ligamentum, Teres. Okay, but here in this, the umbilical artery is closed down first and then the umbilical vein closes, because we do not want that the blood will exit out from the fetal body immediately after the birth of baby. Yes, but yes, we want that the few amount of blood will flow through this flow system and it should be received by the heart. Okay, so umbilical vein is closed down later and umbilical artery is closed first. Okay, so what umbilical arteries became? What happened? This also branched here into 2. There is 2 branches here. The proximal branch of this umbilical artery supplies the bladder and they become open and they are called as superior vesical artery. So the proximal branch of umbilical artery supplies the bladder and this forms superior vesical artery, and the distal portion of the artery, they become occluded and forms the medial umbilical ligament. The foramen ovale is also closed down, but actual anatomical closure takes 1 year to close it completely. Okay, and this foramen ovale became Fossa ovalis. Right, now here the ductus venosus, this ductus venosus became Ligamentum Venosum, and this ductus arteriosus became Ligamentum Arteriosum. So these all became the ligaments and this opening become closes, and here this ligamentum venosum forms the free margin of falciform ligament of liver. Okay, so it is a round ligament of the liver in the adult, so it forms the free edge of the falciform ligament. So after the birth of baby, now the fetal circulation establishes the postnatal or the adult circulation, and in this circulation the blood which is coming through this inferior vena cava and the superior vena cava, it directly comes into the right atrium. Through right atrium it goes in the right ventricle, and from the right ventricle it enters into the pulmonary trunk or artery and it supplies the lungs where the exchange take place, and from there the oxygenated blood comes into the pulmonary vein. Okay, pulmonary vein, and that enters into the left atria. From here to it enters into the left ventricle, and from left ventricle it enters into the aorta, that is the ascending aorta, arc of aorta, and the descending aorta, and it enters into the systemic circulation. So after the birth of baby, the workload of the left ventricle become high. Okay, so because this need to eject in this aorta that supplies the whole of the body. Okay, so in this lecture we have seen about the fetal circulation. What all three aspects we have seen? What is fetal circulation, which took place during fetal life, that is the circulation before the birth. And second, we have discussed the changes which took place after the birth of baby with her or his first breath. And third, we have discussed about the remnant structures, what they all became when they are not in use. Okay, thank you.